Welcome to the Rushmore Show, where it's all about your top four and nothing more. Kirk, we're still in May. The blockbuster be with you, celebrating all things movie and TV. This is a fantastic topic. We have both got our RetroCon. This was unplanned, but I think a minute ago I saw Davey was in the comments. If he's still here,
He was. Oh, look, man, we've got a lot of people in the chat before they run away. Vogs, I think this might be your first time actually showing up on a live. Welcome, Vogs. Vogs has been a part of every live known to man. I think he is one of the in YouTube's most wanted live guest. He's going to come on in the show, hopefully in sports. We got Random Rips here. We have, obviously, there's Dave rocking the shirts for you, Davey. And, man, who else we got in here? Random Rips. We've got
Alan Williamson. Retro Cart is here.
Yeah, Retro Cart. What's up, guys? Hey, look, before you guys run away, I know horror is a polarizing thing. Horror is one of those things, and I'll just share this. If you're not a horror fan, which obviously Random Rips already posted it, don't go nowhere, because honestly, Andy and I are like used to be horror fans, but we can obviously understand that it's a topic that's been wanted. It's been asked of us, and we've kind of avoided it because of our, pastoral nature of things. But I think we got a great show because we have a great guest. That's the main thing is having a great guest. And I'm fairly certain, Andy, you and I may or may not crush, depending on criteria, because of some things. But I don't know that either one of us are going to crush with our guest. And that's fine. That's fine. So when you guys are out there, drop your top 4 horror movies. Now, look, I want to share this also. Random Rip said, I'm more of a horror comedy. So here's the thing: horror comedy, horror action, horror, whatever. They're all counting. You pick whatever you want. Your criteria is your criteria, and we're going to discuss that in a second. So you can put out pretty much any of those. Man, I love Tucker and Dale. That's a great show. That's a great one. Random Vogs is in the house. Man, I'm really excited for you to be here, Will. Horror movies as broad as high fantasy was. They're slashers. So that's the thing. Patrick, here's the deal. This is what our show is all about. So we'll take the topic, and then we allow our guest and ourselves to kind of funnel that down the way we want. And we probably would never do just horror comedy or just horror action or classic, cult classic, or whatever. So we're going to throw it out there as horror, and then we're all going to probably go in a different direction. So you're welcome to go in that direction as well. I've heard the special guest is a Bram Stoker finalist. You are absolutely right. So the guy that we're having on today is a horror author. So hang out with us for a second. Andy, you like horror?
Yeah, no. I mean, no. So let me say this. Not no. Like you alluded to, kind of as even when I was younger, like horror was never my go-to. I've watched them. I've obviously I know the classics and some things like that, but I've shared it plenty of times. When I go to a movie, I don't want to. I literally just want to escape. And for some people, that's what horror movies do. I just never got into the whole horror genre. But what I will say is that there's a unique twist to my criteria today that I think it helped me out a ton in putting this list together. But and I don't want to say that in like an offensive way. It just horror never really was the thing that like what grabbed me as like a whole genre. I was always in the side. But I will say that people are talking about horror comedy, and there's some of those things that are mixed in today that'll be a lot of fun.
Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. Horror comedy is probably my favorite horror. Not all of my things on today are horror comedy, but I do love that quite a bit. But there's some other routes I'm going. I'm not a horror fan anymore. I will say that. I will just say this. I like movies that are rewatchable. Horror comedy to me is kind of rewatchable. Horror once I know who the killer is, what that is, and whatever, I don't usually go back and watch them. Not because horror is a bad genre, it's just not my go-to, right? So once I find out, it's like, okay, boom, suspense is over. I'm not going to really rewatch it, but I will watch a comedy regardless of where it's at. Bet Andy has an animated Disney movie. I kind of was thinking about that route, Dennis, for him, and I just couldn't figure out where he would go, unless he's just like, I hate these movies and they scare me for other reasons. Now, that is an Andy way. That's an Andy way. But hey, Spine Ticks is in the house. Man, everybody that's here right now, if you are a creator and you're in the comments, go and follow Spine Ticks. My man is busting at the seams. 13,000 subscribers to well over 100,000 subscribers in like a month. He's got a great live show on Saturday nights. Go visit that place. Visit Random Rips, North Carolina, Kojiro. Okay. First 2 scary movies. How could anyone not love those? Yeah, exactly. But if you're go there.
I'm very excited for this, but hey, I just want to highlight we got Bayou Geek is here. He said he's kind of scared.
Bayou Geek in
we got
the
13
house.
people right now. 13 people right now. So
I look, 13 people. There is not 13 likes. You guys go and like on the YouTube side. Go Monster House might be on the list. Go like on the YouTube side, and if you can, if you're watching on Facebook or you're watching on Twitch, if you could jump on over to the YouTube side and subscribe, that would be fantastic. We appreciate all of you guys. But man, Andy, I think we need to get this show going. Welcome on our guest. I see that there's a lot of folks here from the conventions, and our guest is from the convention, so I want to get him out here. So, Andy, let's get down and do our Rushmore of horror movies. Let's get it.
All right, man. You've kind of alluded to it. We've talked about it. He's been talking in the comments. But Kirk is coming on. He's the expert today that we brought in to educate us all about horror.
So we've been on this convention scene. I think we've done 6 now, or 5, 6, and we've been invited to Louisiana RetroCon and St. Tammany Collectors Con several times, and we're trying to get on a few more, trying to get on that train. But almost every time we show up in Louisiana at a convention, we run into people that we know. We're starting to become a part of the family, if you will. Hey, how is it going? What's going on? And this guy has a booth every single time. He has some amazing freeze-dried candy. If I can show you the back of my laptop, actually, I could probably, by just lifting it up like this. Oh, right. There's a whole bunch of, there it is, right there. Boom. There's his sticker. But hey, we are going to welcome, he's a horror author. He's a writer. And like Davey said, Bram Stoker finalist. Listen, welcome to our studio here, our friend, Mark Scoineaux. There he is.
What's up?
Here I am. Hey, everyone. I'm loving the comments, loving the interaction.
Yeah, I mean, we got it going on. Y'all keep the comments up. That's fantastic. Go hit the like, go hit the sub. So, welcome to the show, Mark. This is every Friday, sometimes Thursdays, but mostly Friday nights. We were kind of hoping it would be Friday the 13th, but it's Friday the 17th. That'll happen because you love horror movies or you love horror in general. And most of your, you told me off camera, you wrote like 8 books and started back in like 2008. Tell us a little bit about your horror journey. What's got you going on with horror? Why horror and not something else? Share with our friends what you got going on.
Yeah, so I mean, the funny part about me is my love of horror really didn't take off until I was probably in college. I mean, I enjoyed it some in high school, but as a child, I used to be a huge scaredy cat when it came to horror. my parents would call me into the room when they would watch Tales from the Crypt, and right when the Crypt Keeper's head would pop up, they would make sure they timed it to where they would call me in. I would see it and then run off screaming. I was terrified to go to haunted houses. I don't know. And it was just a weird thing. And then something clicked in me. I think it was in college. My roommate was my cousin, and he was a huge horror fan. He had tons of horror DVDs, and we just would watch them every night. And then a real love was born. I've always loved Halloween. Halloween, the holiday, has always been my favorite time of the year. It's resonated in me from a nostalgic point of view. You know, I embrace everything about that season, and really truly love it. I think for me, horror is kind of like people who enjoy roller coasters. They enjoy the safe feeling of a thrill, knowing that they can experience something but be protected the entire time. Myself, I won't go on roller coasters because those are too much for me. But, you know, I'll sit back and watch a super violent slasher film 5 minutes before going to bed, and then, you know, sleep well. So that is kind of my journey. It's funny. My wife is all Disney and anime. You know, she'll come to the other room and say, you know, are you coming to bed? And she'll walk in and somebody's just slashing somebody to bits. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just unwinding. And she's like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, you married me. You married me. So what's wrong with you?
Mr. Zombie in the house.
So
yeah, man, that's kind of crazy, man.
Yeah.
So when I was younger, I loved it, but I loved it for a different reason. So I'm an elementary teacher now, as well as a pastor. Andy's a pastor, used to be elementary teacher. So Andy, I think you could probably relate a little bit, especially like with our kids. But there's certain things like when a young kid uses foul language, right? But it's almost like it's that mystique of like watching a horror movie rated R or, you know, MA and C, whatever. I'm not supposed to do that. So I'm almost like I get to do adult things. So I remember as a kid, I really dug them. Like I liked watching them. There were certain ones, and I was kind of, you know, I was a fan of all the big dogs, right? All the everything from, you know, Freddy and Child's Play and all that stuff that was happening in the 80s and 90s with all the big made baddie monster characters and all of that. It was a big deal back in the 80s and 90s. And Tales from the Crypt, Tales of the Dark Side. We actually had a horror TV show already episode with a great person, Nerd Squish. Go see that one. Tracy is amazing. But I loved it. And then it wasn't even before I became a pastor, right? Both Andy and I became pastors as an adult later, but it was even before that. I just kind of started to lose the intrigue. But I was looking through my DVDs, you know, trying to remind some of the old stuff, and I have a ton of horror down there. And a lot of it is actually on my list, and it's because of my criteria. But horror's. I didn't realize how much horror I really did like once I realized the scope. And somebody mentioned it in the comments, horror is a broad scope. A lot of times when people think horror, you're thinking automatically slasher films, right? Or you know, lots of blood and guts. But there are a ton of horror just Googling around, like, oh yeah, that's horror too, and that's horror too.
It's a broad topic. It's a broad topic, and also there are things that aren't classified as horror movies that I think can indeed be horror. Every year I do like my top 10 list of horror movies for the year, and then I'll throw in some bonus things like top television, top whatever. And it was a few years ago, my top horror anything was the series Chernobyl on HBO, because that was such a horrific account of a real life disaster,
right?
That how could it not be horror? I mean, several, you know, World War II documentaries, movies, you get into the Holocaust, you get into, you know, extreme human suffering. That is certainly horror. And there's a lot of movies that, and people will argue, and that maybe some of my picks tonight some might argue, well, that's not horror, that's a thriller. And I think we're splitting hairs a lot there. I think if it genuinely scares you, horrifies you, it is horror and whatever. And you can argue all day. What made me really love horror and appreciate it more is I feel so many horror movies, especially from the 70s, even some in the 80s, are social commentaries on things that have happened, things that are happening. You know, a lot of horror movies were made after the Vietnam War as commentaries. A lot of social commentary for movies in the 80s, some in the 90s. Consumerism, racism, you know, all of that is on display. It's hidden behind blood, guts, and scares. But that's what makes horror to me so intriguing, is that on the surface, yeah, maybe it's just a scary movie, but deep down, it really does have a message.
That's good.
Well, I love that.
We're going to go ahead and get started in our mountains because we still got 13 people. Thank you guys. Look, as we go, some of you guys have already done it. Put in the comments. You can chat about our picks. You can put your picks in there. If you want to do 4, when we do 4, 3, 2, 1. If you want to give all 4, we're gonna chat about some of those that are in the comments too.
That's a great comment by Random Rips by saying that lots of true crime shows are scary. I mean, Netflix just had the Jeffrey Dahmer series that came out. I mean, yeah, maybe they
George. I think it was my George of horror TV, or it was definitely on my list. I don't remember if it was my George. Was Unsolved Mysteries from the 90s, because I was terrified the whole time I'm watching it because it's just so ominous, and that theme song.
Especially at that age when we were watching that. I mean,
I was like 8,
that song. Yeah, man.
Anyway, yeah. So, man, this is gonna be fun. So, Mark, we're gonna get started.
Let's go.
With you. You're gonna be on the first one. You're gonna give us your Rosie. Now, this is Roosevelt, number 4. If you've been here before, you know, hey, that's kind of the 4th most important on the list. That's what we have determined. And this one's always. We kind of chatted back and forth in a group chat before, and I said mine's difficult, and I've kind of already shared mine's difficult because it wasn't my go-to genre. Yours was difficult in the sense of you said I could give 5,000.
Yeah. So pick your favorite child. Yeah, I don't.
Right, it's difficult because you've got to narrow down. This is the last one, kind of a line in the sand. Where are you going? Tell us your criteria first, kind of what you thought to help you narrow it down, and then you can get us started with your number 4, your Rosie.
My criteria, I guess, was several tiered. One, it's just favorite movies that I can watch over and over again. It's movies that I consider to be truly great, not only horror movies, but movies in general. And they're also movies where if somebody were to come up to me and say, Mark, I don't like horror, give me 4 horror movies to watch that could possibly change my mind.
Okay,
these are the 4 that I would give them.
Writing down notes.
So it's strange because a lot of times you can do your favorite, which is maybe different than what you would consider the top. Like something that could be a favorite of mine. Maybe I know it's not the best, but these 4 I do consider to be they're my best, and I think they are the best. So we'll see if anyone agrees with that.
That's right into what we do, man. Yeah. So give us your Rosie, number 4. What you got?
So my number 4 is 1980's The Shining.
Yeah,
great,
good play. I love it.
So directed by Stanley Kubrick, written by Stephen King, and hated by Stephen King. This movie follows Jack, Wendy, and their son Danny when Jack takes a job as a caretaker in a hotel for the winter season. They get cut off, and the hotel is extremely haunted, and Jack spirals into madness. I think it is a great example of psychological horror. Yeah. Jack Nicholson is absolutely fantastic. Shelley Duvall is absolutely fantastic. Kind of a fun little side note, when my wife and I take our vacation soon, we're going to be going to Estes Park, where the Stanley Hotel is, which inspired Stephen King to write this novel. So I am very much looking forward to seeing what inspired him in person. But yeah, so my Rosie is The Shining.
I love this pick. Couple things. I always, since I was like 8 years old, my family, now this is not the Shining Hotel, but my family would go, and Kirk, you've been here before, to Gulf Shores, and we had this condo that we would go to. I mean, you get into that hallway where our room was almost all the way to the end. Literally every time it was, come play with us. Like, I just thought about the twin girls. That's one of the most terrifying, like the tricycle, and just, gosh, Red Rum. Like, dude, this is a fantastic movie.
How awesome would it be though to like just rip with a tricycle through that hotel?
Oh man,
I mean, that would just be freaking
freak
awesome.
some kids out. Yeah, I've been there, and it's about 3/4 of the way down. Yeah, I could see two evil twin kids down at the end, staring at you. Yeah, Shining, great movie. Probably on the real mountain of horror if we're talking about best movies. Almost every single list that I brought up over the last couple weeks, this movie was on there. It has a lot of inspiration. You mentioned Stephen King being one of those guys that really lives in as a horror writer, you being a horror writer, but he lives in that thriller, that supernatural. But man, I don't know that I've watched this movie in the last maybe 20 years. All right. So I was probably, it's been a while. But I remember it being like the worst. Like Jack Nicholson is one of my favorite, but it is creepy. It is very creepy. Yeah. It's when he's running through that hotel quite a bit, and then he's out in the snow, and then he's looking through the wall. Like well, first off, what an insane performance, right? Yeah. He did an amazing performance. But next week we're doing video game movies, right? And in Ready Player One, they redid that.
I was about to bring that up. You should have seen my face.
I love that portion of that movie when they brought that in. But anyways, I love The Shining. Good pick. It's not on my list today because I'm going a totally different route, but I can totally appreciate it and totally tell you that it's a fantastic pick.
Yeah. Thank you. I do want to highlight Random Rips said something, and Mark, you mentioned this. This is the best. This is my favorite. That's absolutely what the Rushmore Show is about. It's not always it's not always the critics' top four. Now we may agree with them and we may use those, but it's our own personal. That's why we talk about criteria. That's why we talk about our own fandoms and things like that. So, because I've mentioned plenty of movies or plenty of things that would never make it anywhere near the general population.
I just wanted to say hello to our great friend. I didn't even see him pop in. Dylan Thibodeau. What's up, Tibbs? Welcome to the show. Dylan's been on the show probably third most of every host we've ever had. But yeah, Dylan, welcome in. So that's the whole point of the show, right? We don't want to talk about your top. We don't want to talk about the top 4 horror movies. We want to talk about your top 4 horror movies, because we believe that the greatest or the GOAT, Random Rips, and I know you do cards, and so he's in the card community. But here's the deal: if your favorite team is the New York Jets, you do not think Tom Brady's on the mountain. You just don't. Like, you hate him. You hate him to death, and that's what our show's all about, is that every pick is very subjective. So Andy, you're second on the list. I'm sure you have a great criteria for your Rosie, but let's get this show going. Here we go.
Yeah. All right. So for my criteria, I mentioned I was not always like go to horror genre. That wasn't my go-to. Now I would watch it. Usually I was watching it like with friends and stuff. It was just like something that we would do or whatever. So, but it wasn't something like if I was just by myself, I was absolutely not doing this because I was terrified. Like, I'm just not going to do, I'm going to be real. Like,
wait, time out. We got to pause. Look at this.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, if it is, it's unfair. It's unfair. It really is. Dylan. But yeah, anyway, but I wasn't watching these movies by myself because I was terrified, but there were some movies. So first part of my criteria is that because I wasn't huge into horror, if it was a horror movie that I remember watching and actually kind of enjoying, then it's already in consideration. The second part of it, because I was like, man, how do I, because it's difficult for me to think of these things. And I was like, what? Last week we had CJ on, and he got me thinking. One of his criteria, I loved it. We did high fantasy last week, and he said, what of these worlds would I want to be a part of? Now, in a similar kind of sense, but flipping it, which movies would I have the least likelihood of surviving? Like I don't want to be there. It's terrifying. Like I'm just not cut out for this. And the reality is that I'm not surviving in a 99.9% of these horror movies. So that's just a reality. So that's why I had to couple it with movies that I liked and, different things like that. And I'm not saying that, there's not movies that I would have a less likelihood of surviving that didn't make my list. I know that's true, but also I had to kind of like the movie too. So between those two things, that helped me sort of narrow down my list. And I my number 4, my Rosie, I can't make it, and it's going to be the first one on my list, but I can't make it. And I hope this isn't the only mention of a zombie movie that we're going to talk about tonight, because to me, the zombie character is my favorite in the horror genre, right? Again, I talked about it in the TV show side of things. Walking Dead, loved it. It kind of became less about zombies eventually, but it was always centered around this post-apocalyptic zombie apocalypse world. So I love zombie flicks. I love zombie movies. In fact, I've got a zombie fleur-de-lis tattoo on here. It's kind of hard to see all the details of it on this camera, but yeah. So I've always been, a big fan of zombies. In fact, Dennis is here. Years ago, we were working on a side project band called Zombocalypse, and we were going to be like War and dress up like zombies and play heavy metal. It was just going to be tons of fun. That never really happened, but I've always been a big zombie fan. So it was like, if I were to do that, I don't want to give 4 zombie flicks today, right? And I could have done that. I could have done that.
Yeah, you could have easily done 4 of those. Maybe this year.
Yeah, Dennis has still has the tablets. He still has the music, the tabs for all the Zombocalypse. Maybe it'll still happen one day. Who knows? But zombie movie. So I was thinking, I'm like, man, which one do I want to do? And there's just so many classics, so many great ones. You're talking about, way back in the day, and you're talking about even up till today, and some different spins on zombie movies, and just awesome stuff. And I settled on this, and it's the reason that my tagline is my tagline. My Rosie, my number 4 is The Return of the Living Dead. This is 1985. Now here's the thing about this movie. It doesn't take itself too seriously. There's kind of a dark humor side to it too. So it's kind of funny and also kind of campy and just and very gory, in some areas and things like that. But I will say this: what's really cool about this particular movie is that it's credited, as many people believe, it was one of those groundbreaking zombie movies because it was the first movie that really emphasized and brought forth zombies craving brains, right? Not just flesh, but they lived on brains, right? They had to eat brains to do this. It also had fast zombies for one of the first times. They were actually running around. If you remember one of the first scenes in there, there was the cadaver that was, so these guys release this gas and it affects everyone and makes them, brings the dead back to life, that deal. And this cadaver runs out naked out of this thing, but he's running around. But also, you couldn't just kill the zombies by a brain shot, right? They were still living. It was almost like impossible to put these things down. And then I'll just say this classic scene, and it's why my tagline is what it is. Invoke the Nightmare was on a couple weeks back, and we did Guilty Pleasures, old metal band here. We have a song. We actually had, Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 songs about zombies. It was a trilogy of zombie songs. And in one of them, we put this quote: "Why do you eat people? Not people, brains." What about the brains? The pain. What about the pain of being dead? It's one of the coolest, most metal quotes I've ever heard in any of these movies. But anyway, and again, it's campy. It's campy. It's what was it? The bridges. Okay. But it's campy. It's cheesy. It's what it's supposed to be. Again, a lot of these horror movies I'm not putting on today as much. I'm just not going to put this on. But I remember there's enough nostalgia to this particular movie. Also, the theme or the soundtrack was called kind of like punk rock kind of deal, like mid 80s stuff. So I don't know, just overall a really cool movie. I could have gone any route with zombie movies, and I had to pick The Return of the Living Dead. You
got me buzzing with excitement on that pick. Zombies are my all-time favorite genre. I love zombies. Return of the Living Dead. I did a podcast, Fave 5 from Fans, where I did my favorite 5 zombie films.
Your top 5, right? It was your top.
I almost said top, but you know what? Jamie can't scold me now. Return of the Living Dead was my number 1 zombie movie that was a non-Romero zombie film. I love that movie, and for all the reasons you just mentioned. I mean, the soundtrack I can listen to the opening intro music.
Oh, it's so good.
Anything. Oh, the horns, the bam, 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 bam. I love it.
Yeah, it's a fantastic pick.
What you said, it invented the zombies craving brains. They never wanted brains until Return of the Living Dead. It was written by John Russo. John Russo created Night of the Living Dead with George Romero. They split because they couldn't decide where they wanted to go with their zombie universe. Romero went and did Dawn and Day, and John Russo went and did Return. And I absolutely love Return. I love it for every reason.
Return of the Living Dead sequels that are not necessarily my favorite. I feel like the first Return of the Living Dead I liked. Again, that's just personal. But you know, there's all kinds of different things. So I see this cool. You get Angel Hill from WWC. Now, if you're not from New Orleans, you don't get this.
If you're not from New Orleans, you don't know that one. You don't know that one.
I know that one. That's pretty specific. That's hilarious.
Kirk, you like Return of the Living Dead?
Yeah, and of course. Hey, look, I love my favorite thing that you said. Return of the Living Dead is on probably a top 5 to 10. I don't know exactly because I really didn't think it through, of my favorite zombie movies, and I agree 100%. Zombies are one of my favorite movie or horror monsters or entities or whatever you want to call it. I love that whole idea, especially with The Walking Dead. But there are a few other movies and TV shows that I've kind of gone by, and the zombie is always it's very comedic as well. Like a lot of times you can make it funny because it's dumb, it's dead, it's brain dead, right? And so this movie was very iconic, though, in the idea of what both of you guys mentioned, the split and all that. But I did like this movie. It's not on my list, but it should be. And I agree. I do agree with this. And this one's under the horror comedy genre as well. And man, I like that you're starting here because it's kind of throwing me for a loop. But yeah,
great pick. Great pick.
It is a fantastic pick. It is a fantastic pick.
I thought to get it higher. Well,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
You're up.
So I'm going to go with my criteria first. So I kind of alluded to it. One, we have Andy and I, and for the 14 that are still hanging out here, Andy and I are within the last 10 years taking a call on our life to be in ministry. So horror isn't really something that I really thought about too much, not because I hate it, but it's just not something that's in my wheelhouse anymore. And I was like, man, how are we going to do this? What we're going to do? And I started typing some things in and started trying to figure out what I wanted to go at. And I'm going to tell you this, what I love the most is that horror comedy, right? And that horror action. And so when I started putting some of those two together, I was like, man, I've had these movies in my lists before, but in other lists, right? So that's a big thing. I also tried the animation thing, Dennis. There weren't a whole bunch that I wanted. There wasn't a whole bunch that I wanted. So I went mainly rewatchability, nostalgia. Did I love it as a kid? Would I watch it now as an adult? And also, I just kind of made that list, kind of tried to avoid anything. This is the big ones. I tried to avoid anything demonic. That was big for me. It just doesn't, back in the day, I used to love the scary horror movie with a possessed kid and whatever. And that's just not my cup of tea anymore. So I really tried to nail, and I love what you said, Andy, about the zombies. Some of my favorite movie type monsters was there. And man, my first one is going to nail that out really greatly. Last thing, Andy, I'm going to steal something from you. You said last week, if I Googled it and it said horror, it's horror, period.
Yeah.
Right. You said if you Googled it and it said high fantasy last week, it's high fantasy, right? Mm-hmm. If it said high, I allowed Google, which is Wiki and IMDb, to kind of judge some of my picks today. Now, my top four, one of them is off the rails, but the other three definitely fit the horror genre. But in my Benjamins, I might go a little bit more off the rails, depending on what you guys pick. But my first one is one of my favorite movies of all time. I've mentioned it before, but briefly, it was one of my favorite movies as a child. This movie brings back all of the major movie characters. You have vampires in it. You have Wolfman in it. You have all of them. I'm going with a horror comedy, Monster Squad. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Kick him in the nards. Wolfman don't got nards. Kick him anyway. Wolfman's got nards. Look, I love Goonies. I loved everything about it. And Monster Squad is a bunch of kids going on a journey to save the world from Dracula, Wolfman, the creature from the Black Lagoon, and Frankenstein, right? And so four of the major movie guys ever. And it's a horror comedy. It's a children's kind of flick. And I love this movie. I watched it when I was a kid. I watched this movie so many times. I remember challenging people that loved Goonies so much that I love this more, because I always wanted to kind of go against the grain, but I really just loved everything about it. I loved the being in the tree house and them planning out the mission and just the whole thing. Stats, but this film, this is what I have a little bit. This film features a group of young kids that form a club called the Monster Squad, and they've dedicated themselves to monsters, and they find out that they are battling all the classic movie monsters: Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, Wolfman, Mummy. Oh, Mummy's in there too, and Gilman. And they're seeking a magical amulet to kind of destroy the world. It's a cult classic. Some love it, some don't. Man, I would go watch it right now. Like literally put it on, sit the sun down and say, hey, bro, this is a movie we haven't watched in a long time. And as I was pulling it up, man, that's going to lead off my number 4. It's going to kind of the funny one, if you will. But yeah, that's where I'm going with my mountain.
The Monster Squad should get almost the same love the Goonies gets.
Ooh,
it's a wonderful movie. It's got an appearance of my favorite Universal monster, which is the Gilman, or the creature from the Black Lagoon. That one's always been my favorite out of all those.
Right.
I remember watching this movie, and I actually saw it not that long ago. It was only a couple years ago. I saw it for the first time, and it was one of those movies where I wish I'd have seen that as a kid, and I didn't. And it just showed how you're right. It is a horror comedy. There are comedic moments, and then there's that really like, oh shoot moment where they're dealing with their neighbor who's scary German guy.
Oh yeah.
And they're talking with him and then about monsters. And then he says something like, I know a lot about monsters. And then you see the concentration camp number tattooed on his arm. That gave me chills. And I was just like, oh my goodness, like what a moment to put something like that in a very kind of just fun movie. Again, driving that real life horror with some pretty heavy material for what's a kid's movie. But yes, Monster Squad is fantastic. More people should watch it, and they should love it just as much as the Goonies.
One little factoid, I was just curious, so I Googled it. The Goonies, since we're comparing the two, box office, 125 million. Okay. Any guesses as to what, without Googling, what Monster Squad made?
So you're asking. So I'm trying to figure if you're asking because it blew it away or it just absolutely sucked. And I'm gonna think it blew it away. I'm thinking it blew it away. I'm gonna go 225.
I'm gonna go. How much box office the Monster Squad made?
Monster Squad made
probably like 7 million.
3.8.
Yeah.
Million.
Yeah.
3.8. Got destroyed. I mean, the Goonies, obviously, like, but no, this is a good pick. I don't say that to make one of the big. It was interesting since we're comparing the two.
3.8. Wow.
3.8.
It's a shame.
Look,
It's a
you
wonderful movie.
350.
Well, if you put a period between the 3 and the 50, you were actually very close by a geek. So,
yeah. Hey, welcome, Kenneth Bird in the house. Yeah, Fright Night is overlooked. It's another one on my list. Maybe later. Great movie, but it's in that same vein of kind of where I'm going tonight. So. Random. If you like that movie, if you like Fright Night, you'll probably like some of the other stuff that I'm going to talk about because I love 80s and 90s, early 90s. Mm-hmm. So Fright Night is in that range. All right, man. So that's our first set of the Mountain Rosie. Now we're going to. Now you don't need criteria this time, Mark. We just jump right in. This is TJ Jazzy Jeff, our fun name for Thomas Jefferson, and yeah, Fresh Prince is kind of scary, but let's see where you go for number 3.
Yeah, so my number 3, and I'm glad Andy has Jesus over his shoulder for this one. It is going to be 1973's The Exorcist.
Yeah, there you go.
It is a movie that is truly terrifying. I wish I could have experienced what it was like to be in theaters in the 70s watching that movie and the impact it had on the audience. Directed by William Friedkin, written by William Peter Blatty. I don't know if I would highly recommend anyone reading the novel because the novel is absolutely incredible. It's a great book. One of the few books that truly scared me, even after having watched the movie about 20 times. It's got an incredible score. It's a Father Merrin, Father Caress, Reagan. I think it really taps into that fear of a parent losing control of a child. I think it also really taps into another fear that evil doesn't care who you are. It's going to come for you anyway. I think one of the things that really shocked me the most was the actor who played Father Merrin, that was the old priest, and he passed away only a few years ago. And I thought he was old, but he was actually, I think, in his 30s when that film was shot, and it was all makeup effects that made him look old. So that really actually surprised me. But yeah, my number 3 is The Exorcist. It is again not only a great horror movie, but a great movie. Period.
Yeah, I mean the classic, the power of Christ compels you, the head spinning with the pea soup vomit going everywhere,
rocking.
Yeah, it's wild, man. It is. I definitely watched it years ago for sure.
Can anyone eat pea soup and not think of The Exorcist? Probably not.
Pea soup. Yeah. So Linda Blair, man, I mean, again, it's one of those roles that kind of makes your career. Kind of what Jack Nicholson in The Shining. I mean, he had tons more, but like you just nailed it. You nailed it. I remember I watched Exorcist quite a bit as a younger fella, and it's one of those demonic movies. It's one of those freaky movies. It just taps into another realm, and she's awful. She is awful. Split pea soup. Now, I'll hold on to another comment until later because I might end up saying it later. But this is a great pick. When you're talking about mountains, I see exactly where you're going, Mark. You've got two of the big dogs hanging out on your mountain, and I knew you would because they're worthy in that genre. So,
yes,
man.
Thank you.
So we got some comments in here.
Yeah.
Max Fansito, he's done quite a bit. And the funny thing is, he's really old now, but he looked really old back then.
He was in a recent He was in a recent Star Wars movie, and I remember seeing him in the Star Wars movie that came out like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe. And I was like, God, he looks so familiar. And then I went and IMDb'd him, and I saw he was in The Exorcist, and then I saw he was Father Merrin, and I was like, Father Merrin was like 60-something years old in The Exorcist. And then you can Google the Father Merrin makeup, and it's absolutely incredible, the job they did and how that was all just makeup. And yeah, Jamie mentioned the crab walk down the stairs again. Absolutely terrifying.
Terrifying.
Linda Blair is just on the next level as far as like, being a child and being an actress and just delivering some of those lines. Or even though some of the lines were dubbed, it was somebody else.
Just thinking about it.
Yeah, well, and those lines were dubbed with another actress, but like just the facial expressions, committing to it. It's a great movie.
All right.
Nice.
So Random says he died in 2020, so probably during the height of COVID, huh?
Yeah, I think he died of old age. I think he was just an older guy.
Reposted was so Fave 5 dropped it. I was gonna say I potentially have this later too. Repossessed is what I think he's trying to say. Is one of my favorite movies of all time. My favorite line from this is when they're talking in the movie, and he says, "Mom, what does aglet mean anyway?" And he says, "It's the little plastic pieces on the end of shoelaces." And he said, "Well, how do we get that?" "Well, usually it was your job." And he goes, "Well, what about John Hancock?" Oh my gosh, horrible! That movie is hilarious. Yeah. Leslie Nielsen, not Liam Neeson. Not Liam Neeson.
Two very different people.
Two very different people. Right. Random rips. Flash. Yeah, that's that. Maybe. So, Andy, you're up.
All right. So I was in 85 with my previous pick. I'm coming all the way back up to 2000. Now I'm going to cheat in my next 3 picks. Because these are all parts of series of movies, multiple, right? Franchises of movies. So I'm going to cheat there in that sense. Obviously, as not being the huge, avid horror fan, I wanted to pick these for these reasons. And again, remember, criteria-wise, this is what makes this important: is that I'm not surviving these things, right? Like how easily can I escape? No, not happening at all. So I'm going to go to the year 2000 with this one. And I will say this movie, particularly the second one of this series of movies, has forever changed the way that I drive a vehicle on the interstate in particular. And I'm going Final Destination. Final Destination is such a crazy movie, and you're lying to me if you say that you feel safe behind a log truck. You're lying. Like, I'm always like, if that's happening, or if there's any truck with like, 2x4s and wood and stuff, I'm speeding around that thing, right? Like, because I saw the movie one too many times to do that, right? Still scared of log truck. Yeah. So this is, and here's why. I can't escape this, because it's these freak accidents. It's almost like this fate situation where these people were supposed to die anyway, and they're going to die regardless. And it's just these totally unexpected moments. Gosh, the scene with the tanning bed stuff, like, it just, so many different things that happen in this one, and in all of them, and in all, like, I don't know, 20 of these ones that they had. I don't even know what it was, but yeah, this is terrifying, because it's almost, it just, in almost every other horror movie, there's a villain, right? That we, at least, even if we can't figure out, like, they have like a method of doing things. They have a way of, like, no, we're going to talk about plenty. I'm trying not to give away other ones, but like, there's an understood nature, at least to some of these things, like what it's all based on and how they do things. But I will say this, Final Fantasy, I mean, it just happens in any moment. You could just open your door and just fate happens, and something falls out of the sky and crushes you. And that's just what happens. So how do you escape it? You don't plan for it. You don't know. And that's got to be my pick. And I just thought, again, it's not a traditional, what we think, horror movie in that sense, but it's terrifying, right? It's almost kind of in a psychological kind of way, but like, just this, we're terrified of death, and we're trying to figure out kind of how do we avoid that at all costs. And sometimes we just, when it's our time, it's our time. And obviously this movie goes pretty extreme on that side of things. But yeah, Final Destination is going to be my TJ.
I love those movies. I mean, I love all of them. I can sit there and watch them. You just reminded me, I'm probably due for a rewatch. I think they're all on HBO or Max or whatever it's called. And I love finding all the unique different ways that these people are getting offed. I feel like the real takeaway from those movies is to enjoy life, because death is inevitable and it can come at any time in any way. So enjoy living. But yeah, great pick. I love that series. It's a very entertaining, obviously very popular, because they keep making them, and I hope they keep making more of them.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I don't know that I don't know the last one I saw, because they all kind of blend together, because they're all kind of the same continuation of just crazy deaths. But what it reminds me of is when I was a kid and I watched Faces of Death.
Oh yeah.
And you would get the VHS at like the back part of Blockbuster or the whatever, and Faces of Death, or somebody actually had it from their dad's whatever, and like it was real deaths. Like it's like what I feel like they tapped into for these deaths, like all these different things that just kept happening and happening and happening. So I don't remember the last one I saw, but it never fails. About once every, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, you log into social media and there's a picture of a log truck, and it says something on to the nature of, I know how old you are if you're scared of this, or whatever, something like that, to that nature.
Those who know, yeah.
And that is that. Yeah, the log truck was probably the one that is most prevalent. But there are some that are just crazy, like roller coasters and the airplane and just all these, like, it's wild. It is wild. That it was briefly. This is the first. Andy, this is the first Benjamin that I had. I have this one on my list for a Benny. Although I appreciate all the movies that have been mentioned, this is one that I kind of had in the tank for potentially a later go. But yeah, this is a scary series. It's really eat tacos every day, Faith Fi says.
It feels like that rite of passage, kind of like you said with Faces of Death. It's that journey from child into adulthood, and also finding something you should not be watching and watching it, which is how, in my opinion, most horror should be enjoyed anyway. I wrote a book called Cannibal Fat Camp. It's gross. It's gory. It's not for kids. It's funny. But it's definitely for the B movie loving adults. And it has a very iconic cover inspired by the Garbage Pail Kids. And every show people want, and I sell the book out quite regularly every show, which is wonderful. But children, they're drawn by the cover and they want to buy the book. And too many times parents come up and they're like, I want to buy this book for my kid who's 7. And I'm like, look, I just got to warn you. I don't want emails or Facebook comments about how my kid read this book and it's your fault. Especially, you shouldn't be buying a book from the author. I shouldn't be signing it, dear 8-year-old, enjoy your time at Cannibal Fat Camp. That's a book you should find somewhere and be grossed out by the cover, and then you read it, and then you realize, okay, some of my innocence has now been stolen. But those are the kind of movies that you find organically. And yeah, I think that the Final Destination series really tapped into that Faces of Death, again, nostalgia.
Yeah. That whole Faces of Death thing, that was, I remember, like, I think I saw like maybe the first 2 or 3 of them. And I don't know, I remember how many there were, but gosh, there were some.
There's something
that'll scar you.
Yeah. You ever want to watch how somebody gets electrocuted in the electric chair and you're,
the one that got me is the drawing quartered, where that guy got ripped by 4 horses or whatever. Man, crazy.
Not a great way to go.
Well, speaking of horror, let's jump into another horror film. I'll finish off the first half of The Mountain, and I've seen this in the comments probably twice already. And Andy, I love zombie movies too, but I'm going a different route. I'm going with another comedy, but you don't like this one. But my friend Ben, back in the day, loves this one. It was his number one. It was his number one director. I'm going with Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead. And man, I love zombie movies. It's on the top because of how different it was and how the parody is, and I just love the comedy of it. And I definitely would rewatch it because I love Simon Pegg, and I just love everything about it. I love the journey and kind of him like bouncing in and out. But there are 2 or 3 other zombie movies that I had ready to move into this space, pending any comments that were mentioned or said. And I've seen a couple of them in the comments as well. But I love Shaun of the Dead. I love British humor. Andy does not. But I love zombies. And so this had to be on my mountain. It is in everything Edgar Wright and everything Simon Pegg, I'm here for it. So I'm going with Shaun of the Dead for my TJ Jazzy Jeff.
Shaun of the Dead is one of the greatest zombie movies ever made. That was my number 2 when I did the Fave 5 zombie films, not Romero. And I told Jamie on his show I could flip a coin and go between Return of the Living Dead and Shaun of the Dead. And just depending on my mood, who knows what would be number 1. All the reasons you mentioned. I love the British humor also. I love the quips. I love the puns. I love that you can watch that movie again and again and find
something new.
Exactly. You can find a different joke to laugh at every time. I love that the movie is a comedy that then really goes into some really deep emotional moments between Shaun and his mother, Shaun and his stepfather, Shaun and his best friend. Simon Pegg just knocked it out the park, and it is it's definitely one of my all-time favorite zombie movies and a great film.
Hey, I just real quick want to say hello to Trev, the shipping guru. This guy goes live like every single day. I've been jumping in his lives for the last few weeks. Thanks for being here, Trev. Welcome to the show. We're talking your top 4 favorite horror movies of all time. If you got some, throw them down in the comments. He's a comic book guy. They do a lot of comics and stuff like that. But yeah, welcome to the show, Trev. It's good to see you here, man. Yeah, Andy, for the new family and the new friends, share what you love about Shaun of the Dead.
Here's the thing. On paper, I should love it, and I want to. I remember being so bored watching it. Whenever I watched, I legitimately fell asleep. Like I just and here, it's I know I say it all the time. I'm in the minority here when it comes to this opinion, and I get it and I understand, but British humor that doesn't resonate with my brain for whatever reason. I'm a big Will Ferrell fan when it comes to that, and that's very polar opposite to that kind of British sense of humor. Adam Sandler's and different, like that's my kind of comedy. But again, I don't know. Maybe I can go back to it and try to get it with fresh eyes. But look, this is the other thing, and this is not this movie in particular, but like The Office. I'm a huge Office fan. I love The Office. I've watched it, 10 times through at least. I've watched it and I continue to watch it, and I'll go back and I'll watch it again. It just is all, but I absolutely hate the British version. Like there's no part of it that I like. I don't get it. I don't understand the love of it. I don't know, but if he
does it.
I don't like Monty Python either. I know. I'm sorry.
He hates Monty Python there. Random rips.
I don't know if it would help if you pushed past the first half of the movie where it is Britishy quips and humor, and then really goes more into horror.
Yeah.
Maybe. Here's another friend of Breakfast Club and Spine Ticks and everybody else. Hello, Callie and Jordan Squad. I watch them play football every once in a while. Guys, go and sub everybody. Go support everybody. Go find everybody. This is the community that we're a part of, that Modern Day Breakfast Club, the Spine Ticks family, the Rushmore Summit Squad. Welcome to the fam. So if you're following us, you'd love those guys. Go and check all them out. But yeah, Andy, dude, we've been talking. This is episode 119. Andy, every time anything British humor comes up, and we've had our friend Kaab on, and Kaab's from Pakistan. He's from Pakistan. He lives here by way through Canada, and he loves British. And like his whole thing, everything he brought up, and he was like, I don't get it.
My favorite British film, and there is actually one that I really like, and it's Austin Powers. That's about the only British I like.
Yes.
Oh man, tis but a scratch. Yes, Bayou Geek. Hey, Bayou Geek, you probably have a Monty Python pop that he could have. That'd be great. Guys, if you like pops, Funkos, man.
Yes.
All my Funkos are back here, Bayou Geek, behind me. But go find Bayou Geek. He'll hook you up, man. He's got it awesome. Everybody is in The Walking Dead is British. Well, there you go.
They speak with a Southern accent. Then that's
so true. It's so funny when these actors
Andrew Lincoln speak. I was like, what?
Yeah, it's so funny when the actors do interviews and they're all British. And you're like, wait, what?
Crazy.
That honestly kind of does kill me with that. It's like I do the worst British accent. I do the worst, but they nail it. I was watching a TikTok the other day, and some girl was like walking, and then they just kept throwing nationalities at her. She just kept changing into one big long paragraph. I'm like, really? How?
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah, my British impersonation would just be probably offensive, and I'm not. Can't do it.
Bayou Geek, bro. You need someone to collab. We're there, man. We'll do some pop collabs. And Bayou Geek, we want you on the show. We got a bunch of shorts that he's done, but yeah, we'll love to have him.
Appreciate the Master P pop last time, man. The Master P, that was awesome.
Oh, wait. I got you.
All mine's in my office at the church, so I don't have any. I've got our prize pops down here. Only thing I've got is
I got you.
Gene Simmons right here. That's Dennis is in the comments. Dennis gave me this, so appreciate that, man.
So here's some of the ones by you, Geek. I got hooked up with. There you go, a little NWO. He's talking about Master P. There he is.
Make him say, come on.
Yeah, na. And then our last one, there's a short out that we did. Actually, there is a short, and it's right here. And we got to meet Sergeant Slaughter. And check this out.
Sergeant Slaughter, ID number 199-20017. Catch him, maggots. This is Sergeant Slaughter from the WWE and G.I. Joe, the real American hero. And you're watching the Rushmore Show. This is the top 4 and nothing more. And that's an order. Yo, Joe!
Anyways, we got old Sarge to sign it. Thank you, Bayou Geek, for hooking me up with the pop to get that done. But well, look, man, we're halfway, and thank you guys for hanging out, 12 folks. Make sure you go hit the like and the sub. But this is our portion of the show where we do a little commercial. It's kind of funny because we're doing horror movies, but it's not funny to us. We are both Andy and I are both called into ministry, and our ministry is focused on the youth and young adults, and we've been kind of going to conventions, doing some ministry there, and we just wanted to share with you what we've been doing. And so this is what we call Reboot. Check it out.
Prepare to make the jump to light speed.
But sir, they're getting closer.
Oh yeah? Watch this.
So we are doing ministry at the conventions. We're doing Nerd in the Word. And Andy has our very first non-convention Nerd in the Word coming out probably this weekend, right, Andy? I just got to get you the old intro to you. And if you guys have been around Disney Plus the last 10 weeks, X-Men 97's been dropping, and Andy is going to give us a little message that coincides with X-Men. It's fantastic. Go and check that out. Probably this Sunday, if I give you a date. But we're going to try and have some out on Sundays here on out for all of our friends that we're meeting at the conventions. We're getting to preach at the conventions, thanks to Davey, thanks to our buddies over at the conventions. So that's one of the main things that I wanted to share with you guys is, yeah, we do love movies and we love pop culture, but our main thing is we do love Jesus, like behind Andy. And a way to do that is to not ostracize people for their love and their beliefs and what they're doing, but more so get to know where they're at, meet them where they're at, and just let them know what we've done. And look, both Andy and I have been radically changed. That doesn't mean that we need to be on the outside of the convention preaching to people. We'd rather be on the inside hugging people. So that's where we're at with that. And Andy, with that being said, we're partners with a great group called Culture Box. And Culture Box is just a bunch of Christian creators. And if you like pop culture and you like Christian things, these guys are the type of fellas that isn't. So we like to say we're not a Christian podcast, but we're not a Christian podcast. We've kind of adjusted it a little bit now that we're doing Reboot, that we're not a Christian podcast, but we are a Christian channel. And so as our channel is completely encompassing, but we've got some friends that are the same way. Like you can go and watch cartoons and movies from 15 years ago. You can watch guys doing Dungeons and Dragons. And Andy's going to highlight one of our friends over in Culture Box. Do us a favor. Go over to all of those guys and like and subscribe. If you want to know how to find them, it's right down here in the comments or at the bottom where you see in Twitter and Discord. And there it is. Culture Box. If you want to go to culturebox.media, you can see all the guys in the group. And Andy, who are we going to highlight today?
Yeah. First of all, I want to highlight Dylan's comment. Y'all are the Switchfoot of podcasts. I love that so much. I'm gonna print that and frame it. No, but man, hey, just real quick, because you mentioned this, I thought it'd be a good one to highlight today. We do have our first reboot devotional coming out. But I will forewarn you, and the video forewarns you, it is a big spoiler alert. So if you have not caught up with X-Men 97, which now the season finale is already done, so you get the whole season, at least through episode 5, please do yourself a favor and do that. And then I won't spoil anything for you. But in saying that, I think one of our biggest inspirations to do what we're doing right now is some real good friends of ours actually here in Louisiana. And I want to highlight our good friends over at Geek Devotions, right? So Geek Devotions is a collaboration of devoted geeks that are devoted to letting people know that they are loved. They produce weekly geek culture infused devotional, their podcast Com Talk, and written articles, all designed to encourage and challenge people in the geek community, bridging the gap between their faith and their geekdoms. You can find all their content over at geekdevotions.com. Let them know that the Rushmore Show sent you, and just give a good shout out to our good friends over there, Dallas and Celeste. So yeah, Geek Devotions, good friends. Go check them out.
One last thing before we jump. This is horror movie, so many of the folks here will like it. And a lot of these guys were over at Louisiana RetroCon. This was 2 years ago. This year's was actually our friends 5 nights at, 5 nights at Freddy's were the guests. And next week, we are having both Hank and Carl on our show. Here you go. That was Hank and Carl. And both Hank and Carl were in 5 Nights at Freddy's. And they will be on our show next week doing top 4 video game movies. Now, that's video game inspired movies. So, we're going to have a great chat with that. I will just share this. You're the first ones to hear. Joseph is definitely on the show. Christian seems to have just gotten hired to do a new movie, a new project. And as I'm happy for him, unfortunately, he may have to miss with us. If not, we might get him to do a little intro for us. But come back next Friday and see 5 Nights at Freddy's. So let's jump into our next Link. This is Link, and you're up, Mark. Got a lot of fun comments in the chat.
Yeah.
Retro Tiburon. Hey man, that's a dope shirt. Yeah, it absolutely is. But your shirt's absolutely dope. And I saw Rad Bash have that. I need to pick one of those up from you. I need to get on that and pick. I want to get all my favorite YouTuber shirts. And we got some shirts coming out as well. Be on the lookout for that. So we're gonna have that out too. Fave 5 of Friday Freddy's. Exactly. Exactly.
That was a fun movie, that 5 Nights at Freddy's. I had never played the games. I think I was a little older when that came out, so it kind of missed me. And I know so many kids grew up with that as maybe that was their Resident Evil type video game. So I watched the movie I didn't know anything about it, but I really did enjoy it. It is one of those perfect, what I like to call intro horrors. Great for the teens. Good enough for the adults, but just a great way to introduce people to the horror genre. That's a fun one. And
Yeah.
Jamie said I'm old. Jamie is way older than all of us. Surprise.
Yeah.
He's even awake.
He's got his coffee, just black.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, so let's move to our second half of this.
Yeah, it's actually true. Very true. There he is. Hey, so you're up, Mark. You're up.
I'm up. So my number 2 is one of my all-time favorite movies in general. It is 1978's Halloween, directed by John Carpenter. The score by John Carpenter, written by John Carpenter. John Carpenter did it all with this movie. $300,000 budget, and he created one of the most iconic slashers of all time. He launched Jamie Lee Curtis's career. I love the fact that he took a representation of evil and death, a faceless, emotionless monster that is constantly coming towards you, almost like a shark, and there's nothing you can do about it but just try to survive. Kind of a fun fact about the movie, even though I think about 5 or 6 people are ultimately killed in the movie, there is no blood in the movie. The movie's entirely goreless, which is interesting. And a lot of the killing scenes are done off screen, which I always kind of enjoy because it allows you, the viewer, to kind of use your imagination, which is far more horrible than actually seeing it. So, yeah, my number 2 is an all-time classic. It's Halloween.
Now, I love this. The score, you mentioned the score. That's fantastic. And Jamie down here kind of stole my thunder. Oh, I hit the wrong one because Retro jumped in. Captain Kirk. My name's Kirk, and I was like, oh yeah, and they used my mask. But Mike Myers is.
Imagine Michael Myers with like a big beard.
Yeah, that would be awesome. But here's the thing. That's one of the few songs that really kind of makes chills go up my spine thinking of back in the day when I was a kid. You know, you hear that. It's pretty creepy. One of the things that now, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a while since I saw the original Halloween, the very first one of all time. Isn't that the one where they're singing London Bridge? Is that one in that? Is that movie where the roaches come out of the thing? Isn't it in that movie? Am I wrong? London Bridge is falling down. That whole thing. Is that in the?
It's not. For some, I mean, if you, I can't say if you're wrong or right, because for some reason,
when I was a kid, I remember watching this. I thought it was Halloween, the original one, but maybe not. And that scene where like the pumpkin hits the ground and all the roaches come out, just scarred.
Oh, you're thinking of Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Was it Halloween 3?
I think you're thinking of Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. That is when all the kids were wearing the masks, and then I think a pumpkin mask falls down and bugs and worms and insects.
I remember being scarred as a kid watching that.
Yes, so that's Halloween 3, which was interesting because Carpenter made Halloween, which was a smash hit, then made Halloween 2, and then his original plan was he wanted to do a different movie every year that focused on the lore of Halloween, the season. So he did Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which is a great movie. And so many people hate it because it did not have Michael Myers in it, which is why Halloween 4 was the return of Michael Myers. But yes, that's Halloween 3. Yeah, Silver Shamrock and all that. But that's an all-time good one too.
I mean, I don't know when number 3 came out, but I probably watched it within the first few months that it came out as a kid. Yeah, and bro, I was pretty scarred for that one because that freaked me out when I saw that as a youngster. So
yeah, I'll say that to me the scene in Halloween that always makes it is the first person shot of Mike as a kid when he murders his sister, and you see like the eye holes, or like he's wearing obviously not that mask, but he has a mask on because it's Halloween night. Yeah, that's just one of the most.
So that movie came out, and Halloween 3 came out in '82. Right. So that means I was like 5. I'm just saying. I remember as a kid seeing this very young, and horror.
Isn't it great when horror movies just stay with you forever? Burn into your mind.
This song is the one that always, and kind of why I talked about Unsolved Mysteries. It's very similar to me. Like it's very like Halloween's, like almost like a killer theme song, right? And
I used it for our song on the Instagram.
Yeah. So this is a great pick. Halloween he's one of the classics, and you know, there's been so many renditions of it. I like Tyler Mane played him too, you know, also played Sabretooth in X-Men. I'm always going to try to tie that in where I can. He was also in Joe Dirt, but that's a different story. Anyway, let's get back on track with horror.
I'm drawing a blank. I think it might have been Andy. I feel like it was somebody at church, but it might have been somebody else. Has a massive Michael Myers knife collection. Is it somebody at church? Like one from each movie or something like that?
Not that I know of.
Gosh, I'm trying to place where, anyways, they just have a huge Michael Myers. Oh no, I know exactly who it is, and he is in Slidell. But he passed away. The guy, his name's actually Kirk too. He passed away. Kirk Ball was his name. But he had several of the original, from these movies, or like replicas or whatever. And I remember he used to have like this, I don't know, one of the original like big knives.
With all of these Michael Myers movies that are out there, I think the one that usually goes kind of like not spoken of much is Wayne's World 1 and 2. You know, that's one of my favorite Mike Myers movies is Wayne's World.
Well, you said Austin Powers. He's your favorite British actor, Michael Myers.
Man, we're going to talk about Mike Myers a lot tonight. So
right.
Well, yeah. I mean, we mentioned him in Shrek last week. Yeah. So
it was my Georgia 5 fantasy. So there you go. Oh
yeah,
man, where are we at?
That's great. You're up.
Yeah. So, sorry, I got to pull back to my notes. I was looking at the fact checking some things. All right. So, continuing with my criteria of being movies that I would never. There you go. That's a good horror movie right there for you. So, I Married an Axe Murderer. He's gonna cry himself to bed on a huge pillow tonight. I love that movie. That's a very underrated Mike Myers movie. Anyway, that would be a fun one. Anyway, so let's continue. Continue with my theme of movies that I would never survive. And this is again, obviously, is a long series of movies. This, I think the original one, let me say I have it right here, came out in 2004, but we've had so many that have come out since then. It's kind of a psychological thriller type deal, but I'm going to go with Saw. Saw was that series of movies. I want to play a game. Like, it was just so terrifying in the sense of like, gosh, and it wasn't even really the villain that was. I mean, obviously, like, you know, Jigsaw is crazy looking, and you don't ever want to be around that. But you then you get to realize that it's, you know, that it's not actually that doll. It's not like Chucky, right? It's somebody behind that. But all of the contraptions and things that were put together, I thought that, again, I'm not surviving it because I'm not good necessarily under like. I'm not great in like high pressure situations, but I don't even understand the pressure that these people are under. You know what I mean? Like this is a pressure I've never been under. Like, if I don't solve this riddle puzzle thing within this time, you know, this reverse bear trap's going to rip my jaw, you know, my head in two. Yeah. There's just so many crazy things that happen in this. And it just makes you think of all these intricate details that this guy's thinking through. And, it was terrifying. It was terrifying just to put yourself potentially in. Yeah. And Jamie says it, the needle pit. It's like, so many things. Yeah. So anyway, this is a terrifying movie in that sense. It's different in the sense of, I would say this too, kind of what I'm getting to is that, you know, it's not that slasher. right? It's not this, zombie movie. It was almost like this was never thought of, right? This was the people like this was a different thing. So Saw is going to be my link. One of those 3 shots. yeah. Right, exactly.
So man, I'm just kind of cringing here. Listen, this is the one serial killer, slasher, bad guy, whatever movie that was on my Benjamins. And here's the thing. I have this, I don't, maybe I'm wrong, but I have this idea that Saw kind of gets a bad rap from maybe the horror fanboys. I don't know the word to use, but because I see it online quite a bit, get kind of bashed for some of the things it did. But if I'm talking about a movie that I want to rewatch to be scared a little bit, this is probably where I would go. There's nothing. What I love about it is the psychological thriller part. Like,
yeah,
Andy, you've been doing this with me 119 shows. My favorite thing of all time is Sherlock Holmes type mysteries. And this movie, at least, especially the first one, paints out this picture where you're trying to figure out where the key goes, almost like a video game, right? And I just love it. Was so brilliantly written. And then it spoiler alert, I think they're on number 10 now, Saw X or something. The bad guy was in the room, right? So here's the deal. Like when you watch it and the guy's got to cut his own arm off and all that foolishness, it's crazy to me. I think I saw the first 4 or 5, and there have been times in my life, even after being saved and being a Christian and kind of that I've like, I want to still watch it. Like I want to go back just to see the writing and the style and the there's a couple other movies too that are similar to this. One, and I'm going to throw this out there, not that any of y'all are going to mention it, it's not on my thing, like 8mm, right? Those type of like really psychological thriller type movies. I dig it. Now this one goes really extreme. You mentioned the needles, the trap thing on his head. There's so many things like having to go through the barbed wire and the key was like all the way on the other side type thing. Like it's crazy. This one is, Saw was the one really probably high level horror for me that I was tempted to put on. So this is another Benjamin. The
Saw movies are some of my favorite. That first one, I still remember watching it in theaters. I was in college.
I saw it in theaters too.
Yeah,
100%.
I was in college, and I just remember that moment at the end when you have the big twist reveal, and everyone's.
So that was 2004.
It was 2004. So my mind was just blown, and that theater was packed, and everyone's hooping and hollering, and it was such a great time. And all the kills are creative. I do love the main character is like a super brilliant engineer. So he's engineering all these traps or all these torture devices to see how much these people want to survive. I like that they're all connected to each other in some way. They've really created some good lore. And the one that came out recently, Saw X, was really good and actually takes place between Saw 1 and Saw 2, I believe. Saw X is really good. It's definitely worth a watch. But yeah, Saw is one of my all-time favorite franchises. And I love that we created another horror movie icon in Jigsaw.
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to say is, one, I love Tobin Bell, but I love how it like ended up turning into like almost a cult, if you will. Like he had other people kind of doing different things. But one of my favorite things about this movie, and I had to remind myself, so I just went and fact checked me. It came out like a couple days before Halloween every year. And we would go watch this movie like either the day before Halloween or the day after Halloween or something like that. And I probably saw the first 4 or 5 in theaters like right at Halloween time. This first one came out right when I got back from Iraq. So I was young and single and just whatever, and I was like cool with it. Now, I'd be terrified to go watch X. I mean, to be honest, I mean, it's one of those things that kind of, yeah.
Saw reminds me of one of my favorite moments in college when, this was back in the day when you couldn't buy your seats ahead of time. You couldn't reserve movie seats. You had to buy a ticket and hope when you show up, they had a seat for you. My buddies and I, there's about 6 of us. We went to Hooters to go eat dinner before we went to the movie. And that night it was so busy, we had to end up getting our food to go. And I took a whole box of chicken wings, and we go into Saw. We go into Saw, and there's 6 of us, I think, and that theater is slam packed. We couldn't sit together. We all had to find 1 or 2 seats, and there I was, just knocking back chicken wings while watching Saw. I had some woman tap me on the back and said, "Hey, give me one of those wings."
Hey, where'd you
and I hooked her up because you know what? We were just eating wings and watching Saw. And this is a great memory.
Simpler times. Simpler times.
I can't help it. This,
I know. I put it up there and I said, "You're better than that, Dennis."
But look, he said, "Am I?" Dude, I love this pick. Andy, look, if I was going to go one of the big baddies, this is probably where I was going. And it's one of those ones that, again, I still want to try and get back. And look, so I guess I'll jump in. My turn. So these next 2, so I mentioned earlier in my criteria, horror comedy. Well, my next 2 are going to the other side of that. I mentioned horror action. So here are 2 of my favorite horror action films. This first one might be, which is the first one I'm going to mention, number 2 on my list, might be the greatest horror action movie of probably all time. I mean, it's debatable. We can talk about it. But I am going back. Let me make sure I have the right 1986. I mentioned this guy last week or 2 weeks ago on my directors, James Cameron. I'm going with a 1986 film, Aliens. And man, I love the Aliens franchise. Sigourney Weaver. This is one of those you mentioned in Halloween. Give me the name of the. Oh gosh, it just eluded me because I'm thinking Sigourney Weaver.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis, right? Yeah. So like just that strong woman heroine, but Sigourney Weaver was it, man. And I loved sci-fi. And I remember going to see Aliens 3 in the theater. I didn't go see Aliens 2. I was in like 7 at that time. I was almost 8. But I did go see Aliens 3, and I remember it was kind of a big disappointment. It's one of my favorites. I almost put it on this because of seeing it and having such a connection with that movie, kind of linking into some science fiction. But you talk about terror when the xenophobes are like breathing down your neck and you hear the noises in the theater. Oh, God. Talk about scary. The movie is dark. You almost feel like you're on the ship with them, and that extra mouth comes out, and then obviously you got the huggers. You got Ridley have birthing an alien. Like there's so many crazy things about this movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, favorite franchise of all time, and I put the director on my directors. I had to have Aliens. I alluded to it a couple weeks ago. I'm going with Aliens, 1986, James Cameron.
I have to say it. It. I literally texted Dennis just now, and somebody already commented it. But I don't know if you meant to say it, but I'm an 8-year-old right now, just dying laughing. I can't hold it together. Did Kirk say Sigourney Weaver?
Sigourney Weaver.
The great German actress.
I will say this. I did not say Sigourney Weaver.
I'm pretty sure you did. 3 people have thought. I texted us. I thought I heard you say it when you were. Anyway, it was
Well, I was talking quickly when I was trying to think of Jamie Lee Curtis, but no, I didn't say Wiener. But I did call Ripley Ridley, and it's Ridley Scott.
Yeah,
and Ripley is
Ripley.
Well,
two different things.
Something even funnier you said is you called the xenomorphs xenophobes, which makes me think of a completely different movie that have been
a completely different movie.
Space Marines going against a bunch of xenophobes. That's
maybe that one we'd probably get canceled for xenophobes.
Let's talk about how great the time when Aliens came out. I absolutely love the Aliens franchise. I love the good ones. I love the bad movies. I love if it involves aliens, xenomorphs, I am there. And I absolutely had almost every single action figure when they released
those action figures are legit.
When they had the toy line, and I love how back in the day you could just have an R-rated movie that you're not allowed to see, but here's all the cool toys for you know your 10-year-old self to play with.
Toys were legit, and those toys were if I remember correctly, they were almost like McFarlane toys, right? They were like very detailed.
They're very detailed. They were detailed. They were high end. I remember Christmas. I don't know. Aliens
Room and Finn the Collector?
Aliens was the talk of the playground when we were kids because we weren't allowed to see it, but we saw clips of it. And I remember I have a great memory with Aliens. My parents had a party where they rented Aliens on VHS, and they had friends over to watch it, and they made me go to bed, and I snuck down and I stayed hidden in the back of a room and watched Aliens while they were watching it.
Wait. There's no way. There's no way. Are we brothers? And now I'm not going to mention this movie. I'll mention it after the end to make sure that this movie's not mentioned. But I did the same thing with another classic film.
Yeah.
And still to this day, I actually rewatched that same movie and was like, I don't understand why I was so terrified as a kid, but I thought that movie was the scariest movie of all time.
No, for sure.
You know what I'm talking about. But I snuck in, and I think my parents kind of knew I was there, and they're like, oh, yeah, he's about to get scared, out of his wits. You snuck in, your fault. Yeah, we told you to go to bed.
I think what scared me so much with Aliens is that, again, being a young kid, I was in grade school when it came out, and the Space Marines were the alpha of all of the Marines. They were muscle bound, they were tough, they had all the cool guns and all the swag and moxie. And then you watch them, and they get completely whipped by the aliens. I mean, they just run through them. And that first scene, like,
how big is that mother? Man,
yeah,
she was huge.
It's a great movie. I love
one of the things I loved about part 3, and I think I might have mentioned it, but is when the alien takes over the dog and the 4-legged one comes running, and that thing is like flying up over the in the hallways. Speaking of that, you said all the movies. Somebody would mention over here Resurrection. I'm here for it. But I loved even Prometheus, and I love that they mix Predator and all of those movies together. And when I found out, I think it might have been a video game first with the Alien versus Predator before they did the movie, or maybe a comic book. When I found out they were in the same universe, I remember like losing my mind. Like, what?
Oh, yeah.
What? That's so crazy, right? I love it. I love it.
I love the Predator also, and yeah, I mean, even like I said, if it's bad, I can watch it. Alien 3 came out with a director's cut, which when you watch, a lot of people don't like Alien 3, but Alien 3 director's cut, I highly recommend people watching because it's a very good movie.
Nice. Well, that's
I like Aliens 3 a lot. All right, so that's our link. We're to the George. We're number 1. Now, Fave 5, you're giving away all my picks. Quit it. Just playing. Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
Predator 2 at the end of Predator 2. Yep. There you go. At the end of Predator 2. But hey, so you're at the George. This is your number 1, Mark. What you got for your best, your top, your most favorite? This is the movie. You're on a desert island. This is the one DVD Blu-ray you're bringing with you.
Some people will argue it's not a horror movie, and I'll argue to the death that it is a horror movie. It is the first ever summer blockbuster. I'm wearing a shirt. Say Jaw ready for this, and it is Jaws, 1975 Steven Spielberg masterpiece. The score by John Williams is one of the most iconic scores of all time. It terrified an entire generation to go into the water. My parents
don't go in the water.
They still won't go in the water. My parents tell a story of when they were young and dating, and they saw Jaws, and then they went to the beach after, and a piece of a tire was in the water, and it floated against my dad, who just screamed and ran out of the water because it had people on edge. We go back to things that are considered real life horror, and you have that scene with Robert Shaw, Quint, who recalls the USS Indianapolis sinking in that incredible monologue where he talks about the horror of shark attacks and why he hates sharks so much. It is insanely quotable. It is a 4th of July must watch for me. And I think it is, in my opinion, the greatest horror movie of all time, and that is Jaws.
So somebody just said it, and I want to ask this because I agree that this is a horror movie. I mean, it's freaking terrifying. I mean, is that all the criteria we need for it? Whether it was designed to be a classic horror film or not, it became a horror film. And so yeah, what makes this not? How is this not horror?
You know, people argue it's a thriller. You know, when they start splitting hairs of horror and thrillers, and then they give. The thing is that I think movies can be multiple genres. It's not a one genre only. People will say it's an action movie or an adventure movie or a fantasy movie or even a sci-fi movie if you want to talk about giant creatures. But to me, I think it can be all those things. It can be science fiction, it can be adventure, and it certainly is a horror movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll just share. Yeah, it's horror. It's horrific, to be honest. There are 3 songs that to this day bring me back to little guy being terrified. Halloween was one that we had already mentioned. The Twilight Zone intro. I mentioned that on Fave 5 with Fans a show, and when he came on. And then that dun-it, 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 dun-it. Dude, I'm done. Now, here's the other story I want to share. This one is on my it's on my Benjamins as well. But I have a funny story about Jaws. I love stories, but when I was a young lad, when I was a young warthog, when I was young, I went to Disney, Universal Studios, all those things. And what did he say? The music. Yes. So listen, Dylan, you're going to appreciate this. So I went on. This is my story. So we go down there and we go on the trip, and I don't know. I was probably like 8. I don't remember how old I was. And we go on the Jaws ride, and we all sit down, and we go for the ride. Well, the guy who runs those boats and those little things, whether you're on Jungle Cruise or whatever, they're just funny with whippy jokes or whatever. At 8, I didn't really get all of it, and I'm freaking out. Every time Jaws came over, I was not the last guy on the boat, but I was one seat over because the seat next to me was empty. And so I was like all up on my dad, like, and trying to stay away. And he just kept coming up, and I was freaking out. I was like, whatever. And we get to the end, and the guy just starts counting people. And he goes, oh my God, we lost one. And my 8-year-old brain didn't remember that there was nobody sitting next to me. Like when we started, I literally thought Jaws ate the guy next to me. I lost it. I like freaked out. I was like, "You've got to be kidding, Dad! I almost died. Get me out of here!" I'm freaking out. That ride, still to this day, I think about it. Dude, it's one of my favorite stories. My mom has pictures of me somewhere, like right after that, like hyperventilating and scared. Yeah, Jaws is freaky, dude. It freaks out people. My daughters and my family hates going in the water. I go out in the water every time, to be honest. But like, there's so many people that won't go out there because of it.
I finally got to watch it on the big screen. It came to a theater around 4th of July a few years ago, and my wife was out of town for work. And I said, you know what? I want to go experience this movie on the big screen, even though I have watched that movie to the point where I can probably close my eyes and recite the movie from start to finish. I mean, I was hanging on every little bit and part of it. And then that scene when I think it's Ben Gardner, his head floats up when Hooper gets the shark tooth that's stuck in his boat. I knew that scene was coming. I mean, I've seen that scene 1,000 times, but when those strings from John Williams' score hits, I jumped in my seat, even though I knew it was coming. And it's such a great movie.
You know, it's one of the I think it was Jaws 3, maybe the one where they're like underwater in that tube. Is it 3?
That's the SeaWorld one.
Bro, when they're in the water in that tube and that shark is coming, that is nightmare fuel. I like Jaws 2. I like that it continued the story. Jaws 2 had some really all-time good scare moments. And then the shark was all disfigured and burned. And Jaws 3 was something. The 3D doesn't hold up well, but it's still fun. And then Jaws the Revenge is absolutely terrible, but I have probably seen it more times than I should admit.
Where does Jaws play into the mega shark versus giant octopus lore? Remember that was a thing on Sci-Fi Channel for a while?
Yeah.
Sharknado. Remember that thing? Yeah.
Anyway. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Dennis's comment won't be explained, but just know, yes, salt water is dangerous.
That's horrible. All right, Andy, what you got next?
All right. So dropped my phone with my notes on it. Give me just a second. Again, remember, if you're just joining in my criteria, part of my criteria is how likely am I to survive if I was in this movie? And the least likely is the ones that I'm putting on my list. By far, the least likely one for me to survive, at least in my opinion. There's a million more that I'm sure I wouldn't survive at all. But again, cheating and going with a whole series of these movies. But I'm going Freddy Krueger, man, Nightmare on Elm Street. Here's the deal about this. He kills you in your dreams. So I love sleeping. I love sleeping. But even if you don't love sleeping, you have to sleep at some point, which in turn you're going to encounter Freddy Krueger in this case. So there's literally no way to escape this guy. He's got to be the most, I mean, how do you avoid him? You just don't, right? So yeah, but Freddy Krueger, obviously the whole look of everything, the striped shirts, the claw glove, that whole deal is just frightening. I think Dennis said that Nightmare on Elm Street 3 was his George. Yeah, that's a great one. That's fantastic. But Nightmare on Elm Street is in general, that one scene, I just always go to the scene, and somebody talked about a waterbed earlier, but when Johnny Depp gets swallowed by the bed and there's like way too much blood being spit out. Like, it's the human body doesn't carry that. There's no way. Like, it's ridiculous. But yeah, that is just a terrifying scene. The fact that, now I was never a kid who necessarily, and I'll say this, hardly do I remember my dreams. Like, very rarely do I remember my dreams. And even more rare did I ever feel like I had nightmares as a kid. But I can guarantee you that if I'm watching this movie, I'm having nightmares about this, because he's just going to kill you in your dreams, man. And it's just, he's a terrifying look. It's a great, iconic, classic slasher guy. That's just one of those ones that stood the test of time. And it's just, he's terrifying, right? His voice is everything. He's very, because it's in dreams, and obviously all these movies are just heightened and they can do whatever they want to, but he can really kind of like bend the reality, right? Like he's almost like comic booky sort of in some ways when he's in those dreams. Yeah. So I'm going to go with Nightmare on Elm Street. Obviously the whole franchise. But I do agree, Dennis, 3 is very good. I don't know. I didn't watch him enough to say like definitively that 3 is my favorite, but plenty of them are fantastic. And yeah, so Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street. The fact that I'm going to go to sleep means I'm already risking my life. So that's where it is.
I like how Freddy Krueger is pretty straight up horrific in 1 and 2. And then by number 3, they kind of made him sassy. And he became,
and that's what I like.
quippy.
It's almost like,
he became quippy, and he really took off. I think one of the funniest things for me was that he was a child murderer, and they made toys for him in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s for children. And I always found that to be kind of a funny little twist on things, is you kind of forget his horrific roots, and he's never an anti-hero. He's always straight up the hero, but he became so entertaining that people liked him. And I love Nightmare on Elm Street. I love the whole series.
Dustin says, I consider it a comedy. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely comedic elements to it. That whole breaking fourth wall situation with him, and like how he does all that kind of stuff throughout. And like you said, Mark, that's really like 3 and on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the first one, he's just
he's a straight up
he's just
slasher.
So
So I was trying to look up. I was like, give me all the worst deaths by Freddy, because I was like, remind me of some of these from back in my day. And a couple of my favorites, man, was when he had the syringes instead of knives or whatever on his glove, but when he turned that guy into basically a puppet from like his tendons and his bones. I think that was in 3 as well.
Yeah, those were all.
One of them was where like the girl had braces or a mouthpiece, and it just started like going all crazy and attaching to the roof. The TV, one of them was smashed into the TV, like basically ate her. But yeah, creepy stuff. And I remember one of my favorite parts, Andy, you live in Slidell. There's a couple in here, but there's an actual Elm Street right around the corner from my house as a kid. And I remember riding my bike, and you'd be like, there's Elm Street. We would avoid it like the plague. Like, don't go down Elm Street. Don't go down Elm Street. It was not very far from our house. Oh, Bill Key's in the house. Freddy was cool. And I do like that you brought up the quippiness and just kind of like his tongue-in-cheek jokes, and it was kind of funny. Now, mentioning Freddy, I do love the Freddy versus Jason as well. I love that too. So talking about Freddy, dude, Freddy was a cool character, man, and as a bad guy, and just a lot of cool deaths, like just really, really crazy, man.
Freddy, I was gonna say Freddy with the quips and the puns. He's very British humor.
So I was before I put this shirt on, Andy, I was looking for a striped shirt to wear, like Freddy. Robert Englund was brilliant in the role. Look, Freddy versus Jason versus Ash. That's fun. Look, I'm gonna go on the last one.
He kills Kelly Rowland in Freddy versus Jason, doesn't he?
He broke up Destiny's Child.
He broke up Destiny's Child. He's the reason.
It ended. Beyonce got launched because of Freddy. It's terrible. It's true.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought of that. I guess so. Yeah. All right. So look, I'm going to go in with another one. This one is 1998. For a while, if you would have came to my dorm when I was in the military, I had 5 DVDs. I would have considered those 5 of my favorite movies of all time. I've mentioned several of them on this thing before. Gladiator was one. Matrix was one. But this is also one of those movies, one of my favorite movies of all time. This is a action horror, but it's also a superhero movie. I'm going with 1998's Blade. So, I'm going with Blade. And vampires is my second favorite horror genre. If you will, there are a lot of zombie and a lot of vampire on my Benjamins that I love them all. But this one is honestly my favorite. It took a different stroke of the vampire genre. It is very bloody. I remember the rave scene where the blood is just pouring all over everybody. But the cool part about this is Blade is rave scene right at that time. Blade takes a different take. So he's kind of trying to avenge and stay away from being a vampire and kill the vampires as a halfling or whatever. So he was a day walker, and I just love this movie so much. I love the comic books. I have a few of them. I cannot wait for the new. It's been recasted. It's was in the Marvel tank. And gosh only knows when it comes out. Marvel's always trying to change, and Disney's always trying to change things. But I'm super excited for it. Wesley Snipes played a perfect character to me, and Wesley Snipes was on my mountain of actors for a very long time because of this. And later in the genre, I brought several of my wrestling brought a lot of those guys to the scene. Triple H, Kevin Nash. But I love Blade. I love the Blade series. I love all three of them. I love Trinity, even though it gets a bunch of flack. I'm here for it. So I'm going with Blade as my George.
Gave us Ryan Reynolds also.
Sure did.
Have y'all watched the What We Do in the Shadows TV show?
I have.
Okay, so you saw the Wesley Snipes cameo?
Yeah.
I thought that was wonderful that he had a cameo in that with the Council of the Vampires.
So he got a little bit of trouble. Not everybody kind of knows, but he got a little bit of trouble and he moved away and was taxes, I believe. And from what I hear, he's coming back and he's going to be in a movie, or he's in a movie that just happened recently. So it's like the first time he's come back in like 15 years, 20 years. It's been pretty crazy. So I'm so ones to see. I can't believe. Yeah, he was a great in Luke Cage. Absolutely, he was. That Dennis's comment. So, yeah, he's going to be great. He's going to be fantastic. So that's my number one. Andy, I know you're not a big superhero guy, but did you like Blade?
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's not one that I've like gone back to multiple times. But yeah, no, that's a great pick, and it doesn't surprise me that it's your top pick for sure. Yeah. I had this one here. This one and Aliens were 1 and 2. I was trying to figure out where I was going to go at 3 and 4, but and I was again going back to my criteria. Criteria said they were horror movies, and I was like, boom, I'm in for it. So yeah, so now it's time for our time for our why am I so tongue-tied today? Benjamins. And this is where we're going to give you guys all some honorable mentions. We didn't have a single crush, which means we won't crush at all for the rest of the day. So here we go. All about the Benjamins. All right, fellas, this is how we end the show. This is where we're going to just throw out another. So we cannot match anything we've already said. And we're just going to give you some other movies we think should be mentioned. This isn't a very long process like the other ones are. But we will go through. Now, here's the draft order. Mark, you're first. Andy, you're second. I'm third. But in second round, we go backwards, and it's going to be me, Andy, Mark. Mark, Andy, me, Andy. Mark, you're finishing off our mountain and telling everybody good night with our last pick. So we're going to give us 12 more. So if you were to have Benjamin Franklin is said to be the fifth guy that was supposed to be on the mountain. And so that's where the Benjamins come from. If you were to carve another guy on the mountain that hasn't been mentioned, what might it be, Mark? Number one pick.
The granddaddy of all the zombie films, 1968, Night of the Living Dead.
Nice. Yep. There you go.
That's a zombie icon. So yeah, it definitely. So you are building a very strong
Oh, yeah.
horror in which I expected. So that's awesome. That is awesome. I all of yours.
But
definitely.
I love all the ones y'all have picked. You know, that's the beauty with horror too. I've loved all your selections as well.
Yeah. So Andy.
All right, so I'm gonna pick the one that I think that I can steal from Kirk real quick, possibly. I'm sure you got a long list of Benjamin, so it's not going to hurt you too bad. But Matthew Lillard in 13 Ghosts. 13 Ghosts.
Dude, it is on my mountain. I don't remember. I can't believe you had that, but it is on my mountain. It's one of the DVDs that I have, but I'm going to go a completely different route for here on my Benjamin side. A couple of these have been mentioned in the chat, but again, I'm going to remind you, these are all in Google mentioned as horror. I had a short for it right before this. I'm going number 1, Beetlejuice, horror comedy, which I was like, really? But I'll take it. I love that movie. I almost put it on my top 4, but it's not really horror, but it says it's horror. So anyways, but my next pick is definitely horror, and it scared the crud out of me. Somebody mentioned in the comments, is it a Christmas movie? It absolutely is a Christmas movie. I'm going with Gremlins. Gremlins.
I thought you were going to say Krampus for a second.
Yeah, no. I'm going with Gremlins. So Beetlejuice and Gremlins are going to be my first 2.
All right, so let's. I'm going to take a different route when I go here. I'm going to try to pick these ones. I'm going to go with one of my favorite kind of subgenres of movies, not even just horror movies, and I don't even know if it's technically even a subgenre. Maybe they didn't even mean it to do this, but I love bad movies. I just do. I love just see movie like these just horrible movies. And one of them that they took this and then they just went with it. And I'm going to go with The Toxic Avenger. The Toxic Avenger.
Nice. I thought you might mention another one
that
Aaron mentioned earlier. It's still out there. Yeah,
Toxic Avenger. Yep,
Toxic Avenger, man. Toxic, man. That is a great little franchise. I remember watching that stuff on like USA Up All Night, or maybe it was like After Hours of USA, whatever it was before they were half naked and when they were still killing people. I don't know. The Toxic Avenger. That's fun stuff, man. I
haven't seen that one in such a long time, and it just came to Shudder. So I think I know what I'm doing tonight when we get off the show.
Yeah. There we go.
What was the Trauma? It was called Trauma. The studio.
Yeah,
Trauma Studios.
Trauma. Yeah.
Yeah, Trauma. There you go. Awesome. So, all right, Mark, you get 2 picks.
I get 2 picks. All right. So my first pick of the second round is a movie that I think you can actually smell, and that is 1974, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
So here's the funny thing. This is the first time I'll mention this. Most people probably know. I have a pseudo YouTube tag, and it's my woodworking YouTube if I ever do it. And I always put like in all the chats, I always try to find something that has to do with wood or tools. And this is the one thing I put under there. I was like, it better have Texas Chainsaw. Yeah. But yeah, good pick. Now, which one you're going with, the original?
Yes. Yeah. 1974, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I love
it. It's not on my mountain, and Andy, probably not on yours, and I'm sure you won't mention it back to back, but the newer re-release, I enjoyed that.
I liked it. I liked the fact that Leatherface is on a bus with a bunch of influencers, and they. I think my favorite part was one of them had like the camera or had their phone in his face, and they were like, "You're so canceled," and then he just chainsaw rips through all of them, and you find yourself cheering and identifying with Leatherface in that moment. You're like, this guy's a hero. I love the remakes in the early 2000s. I love that one. Yeah, big fan of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So that would be my pick of the second round. And now the third round, my pick is going to be another John Carpenter classic, 1982, The Thing.
Fantastic movie.
That's
a good pick.
Just a great movie. Has, I think, one of the best jump scares of all time. The scene when they're testing the blood. Another great memory was watching that movie in college for the first time with my cousin. We had never seen it. We had the surround sound turned all the way up, and there was the scene when they were testing the blood, and I legitimately flipped over in my recliner. It made me jump so high. So, yeah, that is a movie that was surprisingly, it was a blockbuster flop, a complete flop, but has gone on to be considered one of the greatest horror movies of all time.
Yeah. Whenever you pull up greatest horror movies of all time, it is in the top 3 every single time. Matter of fact, also is your other pick for Night of the Living Dead is also in the top 3 almost every time. Good job.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So Andy, go ahead.
All right. So, gosh, I got a long list of these ones that I want to put out there.
Dude, I got so many I want to name.
Well, you went with Blade. I'm going to go Spawn. Give me Spawn. This is
now,
John Leguizamo.
Spawn is very that movie, I wanted it to be so much better, but I will say the guy that plays him, what's his name? Michael
J.
Jai White.
Jai, yeah.
Is right before Spawn, he did the Mike Tyson HBO movie, and I was so pumped when they signed him to do that, bro. I was really pumped. The clown in that thing is awesome. I love that. All right, so I get 2 picks.
John Leguizamo.
What's that?
It was John Leguizamo.
Yeah, exactly. So I got 2 picks, and man, so many left. I'm really sad that I'm not going to say some of these. All right, I'm going to go with my second, the other zombie movie I really want to put in my top 4, and I'm going with another comedy, Zombieland.
Good. There we go. That's good.
I absolutely love that movie. Woody Harrelson, the Twinkies. Yeah, man, I love that movie. So that's going to be my next one. And my last pick of the draft. And, gosh, do I want to do that zombie movie or... Gosh, why? All right, I'm going to go with the classic comedy. I watched the very first one on New Year's Eve one year, and it scared the crap out of me. And I can't believe this was in the series, but I saw him mentioned earlier. I'm going with Ash and Army of Darkness.
There it is. Yeah.
There it is. Yeah. I'm going with Ash, Army of Darkness. The first Evil Dead I watched as a young kid on like New Year's Eve at my babysitter's house, and like I was like my mind was freaked. Like it is a trip. It is a trip to watch.
That'll stay with you forever. Evil Dead.
Dude,
and Evil Dead 2.
That movie is an actual like fever dream. It is crazy. Yeah. So I'm going with my boomstick. Exactly. Yeah, I love that movie. But all right, Andy, you're up.
Okay. Why not end with potential controversy here? We're going to go with probably the best comedy.
Sound of music.
No, we're going to go Bridges over Madison. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to do probably the best comedy / horror movie of all time.
Do it.
And I only really have one question for you. Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters. We got to put Ghostbusters out there. I know it's comedy first and then horror kind of ish. So, but I had to make it tonight.
Can I just tell you something? Going back to my criteria, it had to have Google say it. And Google said so many other things, but never wrote horror. And I was so upset because I wanted
Ghostbusters. What does it say right here?
Comedy, where are you at?
Comedy / horror. This is Google.
There you go.
It wasn't saying on mine. Or I wasn't.
There you go. There you go. Google said it, and I'm counting it. We have Ghostbusters in there.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, that movie is one of my favorite comedies of all time. It's got 4 of my favorite people. Like, I love that. Yeah, go ahead. We can sit here all night. We're already over 2 hours. Hey, so Mark, where are you going to finish off this mountain?
It's so hard to finish this off. I have like 6 still on the list I could name. But you know what? I'm going to play off of one of your top movies, Aliens, and I'm going to say Alien, the first one.
Perfect.
Ultimate sci-fi horror isolation horror film. Absolutely terrifying. That chest burster scene in the beginning was incredible. It is one of the all-time great.
I mean,
sci-fi
one of my
horror
favorite parts in Aliens is when she's in that big like mech and it can't get all the way to her. And like I remember as a dude, that's a great scene, and just all of Alien is great. I'm glad you put that there. It's on my my list of rewatches. Now I've never like binged them all with Prometheus and Predators and all that. I want to do that. That's one of those things. Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's how we're finishing this mountain. So, Mark, this is one of the things we always say. It happens sometimes. It doesn't happen. I know you have a long list. If you drop those in the comments after the show, that'd be fantastic so other people can see. I have a long list. I'll drop mine in the comments as well. And we can go over all of the what we could have been for more Benjamins. But this is the end of the show. We still have 12 guys hanging around. I hope there's more than 12 likes. Make sure you go and like on the YouTube side, guys. We're really trying to hit those algorithm marks. If you've been here this long, you're a fan, so I can say that. Thank you for hanging out. To all of the people in the chat, whether it's Retro Tiburon, Dennis, who's second place, maybe he's first place now, or tied with Paul of the most guest ever. Jamie has been on the show. Bayou Geek's been on the show twice on shorts. Random Rips, thanks for hanging all the way through it. And we've had guys along the way that have kind of come and dropped out, Spine Ticks and all those friends. Oh, Davey, rocking your stuff, man. Appreciate all of you. Let me tell you what's coming up. So next week, I mentioned it at the halfway mark, Five Nights at Freddy's is coming to hang out with us to do video game movies. Then we have another convention guy. We have Joe Mexican, who is Dopesmack. He is New Orleans' first superhero. He's coming on our show as well. Oh, also Retro Maniac was in the comments. He's coming on our show the next week as well. Retro Maniac. There's Dopesmack over with Andy and it's comic book. He's the New Orleans' first superhero. Yeah, he's got a Kickstarter and all those things going on for Dopesmack. Great guy. Retro Maniac's coming on to do inspirational movies. Dopesmack's coming to do action movie characters. We've done action movies and we've done action movie stars. Now we're doing characters. So instead of, say, Arnold Schwarzenegger or Stallone, you're going to go maybe the guy from Commando or Rambo or whatever, and so that's going to be what that goes. And then we have 2 opening spots. We're trying to fill those because we have to pre-record. So nailing out the dates. Dennis, if you're up for it or any of you guys are up for being on the show, we're going to pre-record 2 more movie opportunities. We had some friends. They probably can't make those times. So if you would love to join us, we would love to have you on. Mark, we'd love to have you on again. Thank you so much for being here. Oh, last thing. We're finishing off with General Kenobi's Bunker, doing top 4 Jedi of all time. That ought to be a good one for all the Star Wars fans out there. And then we'll jump into nostalgia, and we already have a long list of people that are coming to be a part of the nostalgia train. So, yeah, Mark, remind all our people that are still here. They may have missed over in the beginning. We need to send them your way. Where can they buy your books? Where can they find your books? What's the next convention you're going to be at? Whatever. How can they find your stuff?
Yeah, just some real quick things. You can find me at octobernightspress.bigcartel.com. You can buy books directly from me. I'll sign them and ship them to you. You can find me on all the social medias, October Nights Press. Please give me a like and follow. I keep it pretty updated. As far as some new stuff I have coming out, I am excited to announce that I have started October Nights Games. And with my brother-in-law, we have created Cannibal Fat Camp, Escape from Camp Tum Tum, the tabletop role-play game. So it will be a survival horror game in the style of Dungeons and Dragons. We are play testing it now, and we hope to have that ready for the public soon. And I will have another book coming out called The Patch. It is kind of like the tagline would be Michael Myers with a hit list. It's about a guy who was killed on Halloween night. He's buried in a pumpkin patch, and he comes back for revenge. So that will be coming out hopefully by the fall. And I'll be appearing at a lot of conventions starting in August. Cult Classic in Baton Rouge, Louisiana RetroCon, Rougarou Fest. I'm going to be doing some conventions in Georgia and also in Missouri. So I'm going to be quite busy. So always come up and say hello if you see me. I love to talk horror movies, writing, and anything horror.
So which Georgia con are you going to?
I am going to the Preserve Halloween Fest in Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, that's down south. That's down way south. If you're coming up around our neck of the woods, I'd definitely come visit.
Yeah, looking forward to that one.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I got to pick up some of your books for sure, just to support for sure. But also, you've got the candy line going too. So if you come around and visit this guy, Trick or Treat Candy, right? Trick or Treat Candy Company.
Kind of my love of my love of embracing the season of Halloween. My friend David Lane and myself, we started Trick or Treat Candy Company as a way to tie into the October Nights brand, and we're thrilled at the reception that we've received with our candy. We're in some stores. We always sell out every show, which is amazing. And then we are taking our mascot, Vic, and he is actually going to be appearing in his first comic strip very soon.
Oh, dude. So if you guys haven't seen Vic, wait, hold on. I'll back it up again for you guys. Here's Vic, right here.
Nope.
There.
Well, yeah, there he is. He's cool.
That's awesome.
Dude, comic book strip, that'd be awesome. That would be awesome. I would definitely be down for that. So anyways, guys, go support Mark, guys. It's always fun to go to conventions and meet folks and get to know, what's their life's work and their hobbies and what grows them. And we've met so many crazy, awesome people, and we're going to have a bunch of them on in the next few weeks. So Mark, I can't wait to see you again. We'll be at Louisiana RetroCon. We'll be at St. Tammany Collectors Con again. Hopefully we'll add to the con journey to try and get in there and do some reboot with some more cons. But some of the cons you're going to be going, I know they're not going to have us come and visit those particular ones, like probably Cult Con or any of that stuff. They probably want us to come and join them. But we're totally appreciative of Davey. Davey, I see you in the comments. What are the dates? Dennis, just let me know the subject. Here it is. They're movies, so we haven't picked subjects yet. We always leave them to the host. Andy and I are going on camp. We mentioned it with Dylan. Andy and I are going to camp, hopefully with Dylan on our team. That'd be fantastic. But so we have to pre-record those. And we can pretty much pre-record them any day. It's a little bit easier on a Friday because I'm a teacher and I'm out. Andy's finishing up with his school. Really can't do Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings, but we can make something work. But best would probably be a Friday during the day, if possible. But we'll just need to nail out the 2 times, and we'll just pre-record like we did old school, and we'll load those up for those 2 weeks in July. So we'll get with you guys if you really want to be on it. We had some of our friends, some of y'all know them, the Misadventures of Team AJ. They were going to come and do one of them. And What the Podcast, we were hoping to get those guys, and I don't know what happened to them. So they've been trying to reach out to them, and I don't know, maybe they don't want them to hang out with us anymore, but hopefully we can reconnect. But hey, look, we've been on long enough. This is one of the longest shows we've been. Mark, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And Andy, let's go home. Tell our friends good night. It's kind of crazy
Well,
that the horror has lasted the longest, but yeah, let's go.
Thank y'all again so much for having me. Thank you for being open to talking horror films, and you guys had some great lists. Y'all are some horror fans. Y'all are horror fans.
I do love all the ones mentioned. I just don't watch them anymore. So there's the thing.
I'll put it
Great
in the
show. Random
in the
rips, man. Hey, we're gonna have you guys on in sports. Here we go, Andy.
Oh, I was going to say, I'll put it in the comments. I had to text Daniel Eller because I couldn't remember the name of this particular one that he turned me on to years ago. It's a Japanese zombie film that I will tell you. I'll message you guys later. But it's super cool.
One tiny thing, because it was never mentioned, and I almost forgot. Mark, the movie that I snuck in to watch, it wasn't mentioned tonight, was Children of the Corn.
Oh, my goodness.
I love that. And I snuck in to watch Children of the Corn behind the recliners while my parents were watching. Bro. Terrified. But I've watched it since then. I'm like, it's not as bad as I thought. But anyways, Malachi. Yeah. So, all right, man. Tell everybody good night.
Yep. All right. Well, hey, I just put it in the comments, by the way, just throwing it out there. It's called Wild Zero. I don't know if you've watched it. It's really cool. It's like rockabilly gang fights in Japan against zombies. It's super fun. Anyway, let's say goodnight. It's already almost 2.5 hours onto this thing. Let's say goodnight like we always do. This is the Rushmore Show, where it's all about your top four.
And nothing more.
Peace.